Hello, my friends. I'm in such a good mood. I'm about to fly to Iceland with my wife, and it's our first vacation without our daughter, with just the land and an expanse of time. The last 4 or 5 years now, all of my travels have been work-related. Or if I go on vacation, I'm working while I'm on vacation to afford the vacation. And before this, about a decade ago, my wife and I were very poor. Between the two of us, we made maybe $20,000 a year if we were lucky. So our vacations were always, 3 or 4 hour drives north to Vermont, and we stayed in really interesting bed and breakfasts or some of our witch friends' homes. But this time we decided let's save up some money and go to Iceland for a week and stay on the lava rocks and lay in the geothermal pools and let the cold wind kiss our face and just experience this whole new planet, is what I've been told. It's like being on another planet. And lovely Evan, our resident sound healer and one of the many tentacles of HLN running the business with Marika, he just finished the final mixes of my album that I've been working on since 2018. And that feels really exciting. It's the longest I've ever worked on an album. And this particular album is very exciting to me and important to me. It's called My Broken Body is a Medicine Chest. I started writing it in 2018. So that's, 7 years, almost 8 years. It's the longest I've ever spent on an album. It has transformed. It has taken so many different shapes and changes. It has taught me so much about myself and about life and about turning trauma into gold. And I'm really excited. I'll be telling you more about that in the coming months. I'm going to do some fun performances and events and some pre-orders for the vinyl. Yes, I'm doing vinyl because vinyl is so magical on its own. Transforming plastic water bottles into something that can play music just blows my mind. So I'm looking forward to that. And I just finished my book. My book is officially done. 2 days ago, I sent the final manuscript after editing every single word. I sent it off to my editor and it's in her hands now. And that feels so good. So many circles are closing. This album that's been in my heart and my body and my bones and my brain for 8 years is done. I get to close it. I get to press it into vinyl. And this book, which the whole process, interestingly enough, now that I think about it, also started around the same time as the album, 2018, 2019. The first time I was asked to write the book. And now, 8 years later, here it is. So an interesting 8-year cycle for me where these two different forms of expression, of turning my experiences into something, of use, of art, of documentation, are going into the world soon. And that feels really good. I think that's why I'm feeling so good right now. I'm feeling light and accomplished and unburdened by these beautiful things. Because I don't know about you, but for me as an artist, I feel haunted by my art in a good way. I feel nagged the way a spirit nags somebody, the way a ghost or an entity or an energy opens and closes a door that you swore that you opened or closed yourself. That's what happens for me with music and writing. It comes for me in the middle of the night. It rides the silver wave of the full moon and wakes me up at 1 a.m. and I'm feverishly writing or singing or playing the piano for 6-7 hours. I get completely overcome by the inspiration of a project, but not in a manic way, because then I'll sleep very deeply and I'll feel very settled. Just in the way where I'm consistently, it's consistently knocking on the door of my body and my soul. So I feel devoted to it. I feel like it's humble servant. And the most frustrating and equally satisfying part of the journey of being an artist or being a writer or creating something is getting my ego out of the way. It's very difficult. Getting out of the way how I want something to sound or look and actually learning how does it want to sound? How does it want to look? How does it want to be written? And when I find that, the congruency, oh my goodness, it's erotic. I feel it right now in my sex. It's erotic. The congruency, it hits my heart. It goes down to my genitals, my belly softens, my shoulders open. I just feel like I am kissed by God on every inch of my body. Oh, so that being said, one thing that I learned in editing is my editor sent back kind of some ideas about, well, these chapters should go together instead of being 3. They should be 1. And this chapter, we should just get rid of it all completely. And this one should become 2 instead of 1. And this should be 10 pages shorter, and so on and so forth. One of the chapters that I really loved, and Daniel Mate, a friend of mine and amazing, as you probably know him, a co-author. He co-authored his father's Gabor Mate and his book, The Myth of Normal. And after I read that, I reached out to him immediately. And he came onto my podcast. You can look that up. A couple years ago, he was on here. And I got so lucky that we became friends. We connected in New York City in the East Village and had a lovely lunch and like a really funny conversation. And I was like, "You're a brother." And he's like, "You are too." And we became friends. And I was really lucky that he was able to coach me through this book and edit the first draft of the manuscript chapter by chapter and really kind of shape it and converse with me and call and response, kind of figure out what's the best approach? What is it I'm trying to say? Where is my ego coming in? How is this not serving the reader? Or where is this going in a tangential direction? I say all that because one of the chapters in the book was one of my favorite and one of his favorite. And the chapter was called Eating Unprocessed Foods is a Vote for the Land. And it's a chapter that speaks to my devotion to, let's say, food activism, where I'm not out there picketing or yelling at anybody or even boycotting anybody in an obvious way, but in a silent, Virgoan way of being really choosy about what I'm eating and how is each dollar a vote for the land. I love this chapter. It's 16 pages long, and it will never exist in this book. My editor thought it was best to remove it, and I trust her. So instead, I'm going to read it to you, and it will become immortalized as an episode. So this episode is aptly titled, Eating Unprocessed Foods is a Vote for the Land. So sit back and get really comfy, and let me read you a chapter that you'll never see in my upcoming book, which comes out, by the way, in April 2026, a year from now. If you want to be part of the pre-order, which I would love your support, I'm going to need a lot of help with people spreading the word and pre-ordering the book so it shows up on some good lists and I get another book deal and have opportunities to really teach and share this information much more widely. Go to my website, holisticlifenavigation.com, and you'll see the book, and you can click there and you can join the wait list. A lot of information will come out toward the end of the year about how we're going to be celebrating and preparing for this launch, this pre-order campaign, if you will, and this new phase of my life, which is going to really take over a lot of my life in 2026, which is promoting this book and what it stands for and what it teaches, which is food therapy, how to eat your way out of stress and trauma, how to understand the relational animistic dynamic between food and your body and how that connects to your trauma response, your stress response, and your body's capacity to overcome and recover from stress and trauma. So have a listen. Let me read you this chapter that will never exist outside of this episode. Eating unprocessed foods is a vote for the land. All the medicines that have made the most profound and lasting difference for me come directly from the land. The white yarrow flowers that have healed me of intense, painful diverticulitis. The burdock root that nursed my liver and blood back to health. The nettles that made my skin and hair more beautiful and stronger than ever before, and took away my acid reflux. The local black beans I buy from the farmer's market that feeds my gut microbiome and increases the nutrient count in my body, as well as the adrenaline-lowering soluble fiber that it contains. The fresh well water rich with sulfur that healed me of a stomach condition. The eggs I fry each morning from a local farm that feeds my brain and nerves, their protein balancing my blood sugar and giving me energy for the day. The broccoli on my plate that grows peacefully in organic fields, fields that welcome birds, honeybees, and a diverse ecosystem of animals, plants, herbs, and insects because they are never sprayed with poisonous chemicals. Best of all, the protection and well-being the land offers me is mutual and reciprocal. By supporting organic, regenerative, biodynamic, and chemical-free farming methods, I am doing my part to help safeguard local communities and ecosystems. The laws banning the spraying of organic fields prevent the water in that area from being contaminated by pesticides and chemicals, because farms that raise grass-fed, natural animals don't rely on antibiotics and grain feed to fatten up livestock. They yield less animal waste, another boon to local waterways. Small, local, slower, chemical-free farming methods preserve our wildlife by supporting pollinators, wild animals, and water sources for the humans in that area. These farms are integral parts of our community. I derive a sense of well-being just knowing that the modest amount of dollars I've spent in my lifetime to support them has gone directly to keep them going. Even when the raw cost seems higher, I've found that participating in the local farm economy as I do enriches my sense of being human in a palpable and truly priceless way. When you shift your eating habits from processed toward whole, your food choices at the store become like votes in an election booth. With each purchase, you're pulling the lever in support of our beautiful planet. Yes, you might have to forego your daily coffee or several days' worth of Snickers bars to afford that jar of pricey organic almond butter. Meanwhile, that beautiful field of almond trees feeds wild bees, birds, and is a sanctuary for all things living. Plus, the jar will last you for weeks. Eating whole foods is not just about you, it's about the earth and the many communities of plants and animals and insects and soil bacteria and humans inhabiting these corners of the earth. Eating whole, unprocessed foods is part of our individual and collective repairing of the harms humans do to this planet, just by existing in the numbers and ways that we do. The United Nations has found that a third of all human-caused greenhouse emissions come from agriculture, a third. The biggest culprits are methane from cattle manure, especially when those animals are overeating grain feed, nitrous oxide from fertilizers that are only necessary when we've depleted the soil with chemicals and monocrops, and carbon dioxide from cutting down forests for farmland. That box of Cheez-Its, or the beloved Quarter Pounder from McDonald's, all of these affordable processed foods come from huge monocrops of corn, wheat, and soy, as well as large cattle farms for producing beef. How huge am I talking? How large are we talking about here? Iowa, which is known for corn production, had 13.1 million acres of corn in 2023. Now, consider that 95% of those acres of corn are genetically modified to survive being highly sprayed with poisonous pesticides and herbicides. Pesticides make it so bugs, pollinators, and even birds die if they eat from, or in some cases even, land on these fields. Herbicides keep any wild native plants from thriving. So what you have here is over 12 million acres of land that are only growing corn, killing pollinators, poisoning waterways, and preventing the growth of any local herbs and plants, aka medicine. And that's just Iowa. This is not the party I'm voting for at the grocery store. Rather than repainting the familiar picture of a planet in crisis, I want to focus here on how we are truly and intimately related to the land. But first, let's celebrate some earthly resilience. Just as our own bodies can recover from that inner roller coaster of stress caused by stimulants, depressants, and glucose spikes, our beautiful planet recovers quite quickly as well. Did you know in January 2023, the UN announced that the hole in the ozone layer is on track to recover in just 4 decades? This was the dreaded hole I was terrified about throughout my entire childhood, because it seemed to us that the sun was just going to destroy everything from our skin to our atmosphere. But by discontinuing our use of certain chemicals that contributed to this hole, it seems we've given the sky a fighting chance, and is able to recover and even reverse the impairment we were causing. DDT, a powerful pesticide developed in the 1940s, caused the eggshells of many native birds to thin, resulting in the endangerment of a variety of bird species. Among them was the American bald eagle, which was officially put on the endangered species list in the late 1960s, with only 417 known pairs left in the entire country. Yes, only 417 pairs in the entire country. After the banning of DDT and better forestation practices, there are now over 300,000 bald eagles thriving. I passed 2 this week while driving home and bowed in my heart to this beautiful bird, feeling the gratitude of its resilience and to the humans that took steps to stop poisoning them and deforesting their homes. Like our bodies, the population of these birds have regenerated and continue to do so when the environment allows them to thrive. Here's a regeneration story that's near and dear to my own heart. In 2007, I was living in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I was living on food stamps in a very low-income neighborhood and earning $7.25 an hour at the gas station down the block. I had just dropped out of college and paused my nutrition studies, but was still practicing, I'm doing air quotes, from behind the till with anyone who wanted nutritional help. I even managed to get the gas station to stock organic food that could be bought with food stamps, which was quite the win since many people in low-income neighborhoods buy a lot of their groceries at the gas station. Eggs, chips, milk, candy bars, and frozen meals were the usual fare. This era of my life gave me invaluable first-hand experience of what it's like to survive with little money and barely any access to real food. Down the street was an old former recycling facility that had gotten torn down and designated as a brownfield. Brownfields are plots of land that once housed industrial properties like gas stations, auto garages, and in this case, a recycling facility. This place recycled aluminum, and the land underneath it had become so barren and unusable it just sat there. It was also right on the corner of what many referred to as the Hood, which was a low-income row of houses where I lived in an attic with my friend and her family. A friend I knew was involved in a project called Dig It, founded by a man named Sahib Sabur, which aimed to bring community gardens to low-income neighborhoods with little to no access to fresh foods. He asked if I would help get the land ready for planting. It was a hell yes. The idea was to take on 20 kids who had probably never even eaten a fresh vegetable in their lives and have them over the summer work this brownfield into a thriving garden. They would go home with fresh food, learn about stewarding the land, and gain a sense of empowerment. First things first, the land had to be reclaimed and transformed, or related to. I wanted to find some ways to support this early stage. So my father, who lived an hour away and worked as a tree trimmer for most of his life, founded his own company, had great success for decades, and he was able to volunteer his time to grind down some stumps from old trees so we could begin regenerating the land for this community garden. He did so, and soon we had a small, cute plot of compacted earth with some herbs growing around it. The soil was like dry cardboard, so we began tilling it. Shoveling, singing, waiting for rain, and composting, lots of composting. In just a matter of weeks, we had a beautiful, soft, rich plot of earth that was ready for seedlings. 20 years later, Dig It is still a thriving community project that continues to transform the youth that work there as they transform the earth they're working on. More beautiful reciprocity. One of the youth advisors even recalls the leader of a local gang coming to work there one summer. By the end of the summer, he left the gang and went to college. That is the power of repairing one's connection to the earth. My friend Asha Frost, whose words were included in Chapter 8, reminds me about something her wise elders told her. When you're feeling low, go lower. When you're slow, tired, achy, and feeling emotionally low, your body is most likely reaching for the earth or being called to. The land has the ability to support us in ways our ancestors have always known, and that science is just catching up to. An article summing up various studies was published in 2015, which cited that medical infrared imaging shows that when individuals stood on the earth with a conductive patch, inflammation in their body subsided within 30 minutes. This, along with other studies, points to the energy that the earth possesses and the relationship of that energy with our bodies. So perhaps feeling low is just the body's way of asking to be held. I find this interesting in light of my early chapter on stimulants. Think about how often we end up stimulating ourselves out of lowness when sometimes all we need is a good cry. Instead of a coffee, maybe I need to lay on a rock, in a field, or sit on a bench with my bare feet on the ground. Maybe when we're low, our body is looking for ways to support the lowness, rather than some adrenaline exit ramp out of the lowness over and over and over. The land is, after all, our first secure attachment as a species. Yes, we come from our mothers, but the land nourishes our mothers so they can nourish us. Earth is our true and ultimate mother, which is why cultures and languages all over the world refer to her that way. When we're low, we might just want our mother. So it makes perfect sense to me why the whole balancing foods are so powerful. They haven't been separated from their innate intelligence from the land. The soil created them, and then we ate them. Or the soil created grass to nourish their bodies, and then we ate those bodies. There's no middleman besides the important hands and bodies that grew and delivered that food to us. steamed broccoli, beans, and eggs, my personal favorite breakfast, are all still so close to their earthly forms that no wonder I'm so supported by them. They haven't been torn apart and reformed into something else. Floured products, refined carbohydrates, and processed foods are literal fragments of their original selves. Psychologically speaking, they're dissociated. And eating foods that have been disconnected from their true essence may cause us to become disconnected from ours. For me, I could easily lose myself in a bag of chips, but a bowl of beans and broccoli make it very hard to disconnect. Relationships are not just human to human, or even human to animal. Everything is alive, and everything has its own frequency. This way of seeing things is known as animism. Through this lens, everything becomes a being that we have a relationship with. The wind, the sun, the water, spaces themselves, and of course, the food we eat. Our food is as much of a being as we are, and like all relationships, we have the ability to co-regulate, find safety with, or co-dysregulate, which means become stressed with, our foods. The most nourishing foods are the ones that get to be loved while they're growing. Whether we're talking about a crop that has been loved by the pollinators fertilizing them, or the eggs of chickens that get to roam freely and cluck happily in the arms of the people tending to them, food is a relationship, and the growing and manufacturing of the food is a big part of that connection. Most of the processed foods in America contain corn, soybean oil, canola oil, and or sugar as one of the top 3 ingredients, and 90% of those crops come from genetically modified organisms or GMOs. Genetically engineering food is a process where the food's DNA is altered in a laboratory in order to yield stronger, hardier, or otherwise superior crops. Some people see it as a means to ensure food security, while others see it as a direct manipulation of the nutritional and even spiritual integrity of nature's bounty. What I want to look at is why companies genetically engineer the crops, focusing specifically on a company called Monsanto that was bought out by Bayer in 2018. Monsanto genetically engineers the DNA of plants so they can survive a very powerful weed killer known as Roundup. The main ingredient in Roundup is glyphosate. This is a very important point in the conversation between nutrition and recovering from stress and trauma. A natural crop of soybeans or canola would die if they were sprayed with Roundup, but GMO crops are engineered to be immune to this toxin, so they can be sprayed over and over again. This effectively kills all of the natural herbs and weeds in that field, allowing the main food crop to proliferate. This toxin also kills bees, birds, and native plants. If you live near one of these fields, it can seep into your tap water, through the soil, and even into your lungs through the air. And here's the real kicker. This toxic glyphosate is present in the finished product, so you can live in a paradise hours away from a field of GMO crops being relentlessly sprayed, yet many of the processed foods you're eating contain these crops, and they also contain the high amounts of glyphosate. And for what? So that Monsanto gets more bang for its buck and produces higher yields. It's not really about creating better crops at all, but rather something much cruder, growing more to sell more. A 2019 study tested GMO soybeans from Iowa and compared them to conventional and organic soybeans grown in the same area. They were shocked to find that there was an average of 9 milligrams of glyphosate per 2 pounds of soybeans. Conventional and organic soybeans contained 0. The reason is simple. The only kind of soybean that doesn't die in the presence of glyphosate is one that was genetically engineered to survive its toxic effects. What was also interesting was that the organic soybeans contained significantly more protein, zinc, barium, and several amino acids than the others. Because GMO crops are lab designed to withstand a very large amount of pesticides and herbicides, their fields tend to become depleted of nutrients and healthy bacteria. In other words, their biodiversity is wrecked. Think of the Earth's soil like our own gut microbiomes. When your gut is balanced with a diverse mix of bacteria, your body's able to synthesize more nutrients, regulate hormones, positively impact the neurotransmitters responsible for being in a good mood, and even keep you regular. The Earth's soil also relies on a complex mix of competing insects, wild herbs, bird poop, and bacteria in the soil from all these creatures to deliver rich nutrients to the plants growing in that dirt. A GMO monocrop means absolutely no biodiversity, more chemicals in the soil than bacteria and nutrients. It's like what happens to us when we take a bunch of antibiotics without any probiotics. We lose our ability to digest food and have normal bowel movements, while our immunity becomes impaired. The CDC even put out a statement on their website in April 2024 that 81% of the US population has had recent exposures to glyphosate. This was based on urine samples from a diverse group of over 2,000 Americans ages 6 and older from all over the country. This chemical was present in the urine of these individuals who represented large demographics of people, but they also noted that the participants who had not eaten for 8 hours or more had lower levels of glyphosate in their urine, which is proof that the level of this chemical in our urine increases after we eat foods that are sprayed with it on the farm. In other words, when you eat GMOs and chemically raised foods, you are eating the chemicals that hide inside the finished product. One study in 2019 even found that glyphosate exposure increases your risk for non-Hodgkin lymphoma by 41%. Damn. Simply put, we are what we eat. And we are also how we treat our earth and one another. How can a food be nutritious, healing, and nourishing if it's made in a way that just destroys the ecosystems and waterways and communities around it? On a level of reciprocity alone, this is highly unbalanced, and it's hard to expect long-term sustainable growth with this model. This is another reason why I see eating whole unprocessed foods as a powerful form of activism. For example, bean farms are known to be incredibly good for their environments. Beans put nitrogen back into the soil, which fertilizes the ground and reduces the amount of fertilizers needed to grow them. Less fertilizers means less runoff into the waterways, which creates an imbalance of biodiversity in the water. Planting beans where another crop grew previously is one way to regenerate the soil because of their natural fertilizing abilities. Beans also use less water than any other crops and other protein sources. When I spend $5 to $10 a week on beans, I am directly supporting the regeneration of land somewhere else. The same is true with most crops that are organic, GMO-free, or chemical-free, as well as locally farmed eggs and animal products. Smaller local farms mean better living conditions, less environmental waste and pollution, and healthier, more nutritious products because they travel less far and are often grazing on the local herbs, grubs, and plants in your own area's meadowlands and pastures. Going to a farmer's market, local meat market, or even buying homegrown chemical-free produce in your area supports families and farmers in your community. It keeps the money in the community, builds on your relationships with people who grow your food, and it strengthens your bonds to the land and the place where you live. When my body is being nourished and built by the very plants and animals in my mountain town, I feel a deep kinship with the land I live on. I breathe the same air, bask in the same sunlight, and experience the same climate changes and weather patterns as the food I'm eating. There's an incredible symbiosis with this that no study or quantitative study is ever likely to capture. It's something one must feel and experience. For me, it's a deep security and reverence for this beautiful land that holds me. I am indebted to these beings that stop living so I can continue to. The bean that will, quote, never sprout to see its babies, in the words of my friend Mary, a Quaker chef at a camp I used to attend. Think of the chicken whose egg will not be hatched so your body can find balance, or the fish whose life was ended so that you may be nourished to see another day. Vegetables, herbs, fruits, grains, beans, and animals all are beings that want to live and thrive, yet whose lives may be cut short so that our lives can continue. Honoring their death with my life gives me a purpose that I never found at the bottom of a chip bag, and believe me, I searched through hundreds of those. These whole, balanced, unprocessed foods return me to myself. Their intelligence, nutrients, and ability to nourish me into being is a daily miracle. It's a gift every time I eat. If I'm depressed, they help me move through it. If I'm tired, they give me support to feel low. If I'm happy, they sustain that happiness. These foods don't try to change my state by blissfully numbing me out or blowing me out into dopamine-rich oblivion. Instead, they sober me. These whole foods, even when they can't make me feel better, help me to feel more. No wonder it's the last thing we reach for when we're already having a hard day. Our culture teaches us to not feel, not go lower, and to push through whatever inconvenient and difficult emotions might be alive in us. And sometimes we need to. Sometimes the coffee is exactly what gets us through our day, and that chocolate bar is the hug we're just not able to access when we need it the most. I have profound empathy for myself and anyone else who's going through this or has gone through this, and I am simultaneously conscious of how using food to numb ourselves negatively impacts our planet. Our insatiable need to fill a void with food is what compels us to go to the store and compulsively pull the lever of processed food companies which cast the vote for harsher working conditions, chemical crops, and temporary ecosystem destruction caused by the modern farming methods required to produce such copious amounts of these cheap and all too accessible ingredients, the ones that are so damn dependable that we become totally dependent on them. Our reliance on pesticides, herbicides, and GMOs puts us into conflict with the earth, even as it creates more imbalance within our bodies. The inner chaos of glucose spikes, insulin spikes, and adrenaline spikes manifests on these chemical farms as an external chaos of polluted waterways, groundwater, and barren fields that cannot support the growth of nearly anything. Silencing my grief and literally stuffing down my tears with these products also silences and suppresses the emotional world of the meadow. A once thriving landscape alive with a diverse amount of wild herbs and vibrant flowers conducting the sounds of pollinators and songbirds becomes depleted, desert-like, and unable to nurture any growth. We are so intimately connected to and mirrored in the earth that we must oppress the earth and its creatures just to create food that then oppresses our own emotional expressions and vibrance. It is truly a vicious cycle, and it is a mirror. The opposite is also true. When I buy whole and processed foods, I support the conditions that allow lands to thrive in my own locale, and all the way into far-reaching corners of the world. The beans that support my body and feed my gut microbiome support and feed the soil's microbiome just by the very nature before they made their way to my plate. The blueberries whose dark blue hues protect my body from stress-induced oxidation, and they also protect and sustain the wild bees and pollinators who depend on the nectar residing deep in their blossoms so they can become berries. The support and balance that I receive from these whole unprocessed foods is just a continuation of their generosity. It's in their nature to give life wherever they are. Whether it's the lettuce rooted in the soil, the cow grazing on a wild meadow, or a beautiful orchard of sweet, unsprayed cherry trees. The very existence of these natural and organic crops are inherently a resistance movement, standing up to harmful chemicals, the destruction of biodiverse ecosystems, and the polluting of many beautiful waterways. This is the lever I pull as often as I'm able to. I vote for their continuation and ability to exist. And by doing so, the land thrives, wild places are preserved, and my own body is better supported and nourished. Through this lens, eating becomes a prayer of gratitude. It's not a moment to get lost and zone out, but a ritual to deeply feel and experience what it's like to be supported. When I look down on my plate and see vibrant steamed greens, round humble beans, and local animal products, I feel a deep gratitude to receive the result of so much labor that I didn't have to do. I find it hard to put such gratitude into words, but I do find images and I ritually thank them and they land into my mind, a kind of saying grace with my mind's eye. I thank the rain for pouring down on these fields and bringing life-giving water to them. I thank the bodies, hearts, and hands who wake up in the early hours of the morning and put in 12, 14, 16-hour days, enduring all different weather conditions to steward the land that feeds us. I thank the sun for its ability to nurture and support so much growth. I thank the quiet meadows where cows graze, the patches of unmowed pollinator sections on biodynamic farms, the bees that make love to every flower to allow the emergence of grains, almonds, cucumbers, squash, and seeds. I thank all the seen, imagined, unseen, and unimagined support that went into these three simple things on my plate: broccoli, black beans, and eggs. Like a bee sensually rubbing its sweet face onto the yellow dusty stamen of a flower that extends from its womb, my selfish desire to survive is simultaneously generous. Like a flower making itself irresistible to a bee to meet its own survival needs, I am attracted to these simple whole foods. They speak to the part of me that wants to be here, the part that is connected, open, and whole in all my complexities and emotional states. And as I purchase the foods that gift me sobriety rather than numbness and disconnection, my every dollar supports more of a parallel sobriety in the lands where these foods come from. This is the benevolent gift of reciprocity. And so this has been my ongoing activism for the past 20 years. I live the thing I want someone else to do, and then, if it's a truly wonderful path, people will feel it when they're ready. My private nutrition practice exploded due to this phenomenon. I didn't market or promise results. My clients were walking billboards. Whether it was weight loss, clearer skin, more balanced emotions, or becoming pregnant, after years of infertility, I watched people transform their bodies and their lives from eating more simple whole foods, like the irresistible flower, we too become vibrant from the deep support and nourishment that comes from whole foods. These whole foods speak through us by allowing our bodies to thrive and look healthy. They signal to others what they're made of. After a few months of working with me, I would start getting calls from my clients, coworkers, and friends and loved ones. How did you help get Janet pregnant? Or my husband is so caring and sweet. He's like a whole other person. What did you do? Or, oh my God, I didn't even recognize Samantha after she lost so much weight. Can you help me do the same thing? And I would always reply with my humblest and truest response. And it was, I did nothing. They did all the work and the food did the healing. But my real answer was this. Of course, these people were happier, healthier, and more beautiful. Their bodies weren't burdened with chemicals, excess calories, and malnourishment. And on a more spiritual, energetic level, their bodies weren't burdened with the land trauma associated with processing these foods. When farmers in India are experiencing water shortages due to Coca-Cola factories, and factory-farmed beef, soybeans, and sugar are driving deforestation in the Amazon rainforest, you can't expect to feel good in your body. Because your body and the Earth's body are one. Reciprocity, by definition, works both ways. If a food depends on the destruction of a region and its people, it must also destroy something in us. One of the greatest pleasures of my life has been watching individuals make this connection and feel it in their own bodies. The more nutritionally sober they get, the more somatically attuned they become to the consequences processed foods have on their bodies. Learning to feel again means that you get to feel the impact of not feeling. Like you, these were good people. Sweet, honest, caring, empathic people who had no idea that the snack of their choice was causing destruction to someone else's land and ecosystem. People who were just trying to get through their lives and knew only that that candy bar or bag of chips takes the edge off. Science, studies, and reporting are all helpful to make sense and validate everything I'm speaking about in this book, but look no further than to your own body. It is constantly speaking to you. It is constantly showing you through symptoms and syndromes how the food you eat is affecting it. You can know the origins, and over time, you will begin to feel the origins in your body. This is what I see as the land communicating through us. A happy land will show up in our bodies as health. A sad, oppressed land will show up as illness. Listen to it and take your time to make the shifts based on your capacity. Like the earth, your body is sensitive and patient and resilient and wise. Give it kindness and see how it responds. Thank you for watching today's episode. Please like and subscribe if you found it useful, and let me know in the comments what you want me to cover next. I have developed a 4-week self-paced course that takes 18 years of my personal and professional experience and puts it into one place where you can easily and quickly learn the foundations of recovering from stress and trauma. How does the food you eat affect your stress levels? How do the relationships in your life create stress or peace? How does the relationship you have with your body allow you to feel happier and more settled? I will cover all this and so much more in this 4-week self-paced course. And the best part, it's self-paced. You don't have to sign up at a certain date or finish it at a certain time. It's yours for life, and it's waiting there for you when you're ready to finish it. Throughout this course, I'll be teaching you philosophies and practices that combine my 3 favorite modalities: somatic experiencing, embodied parts work, and nutrition. For more information on this course, click on the link in my episode details.
Getting there, it was just, I could tell something special was about to happen.
There's just something about in-person retreats that just doesn't compare to online space.
Minla is outstandingly beautiful. Why not be there with Luis and his team?
My body knew that something intense was going to happen in the most beautiful way.
It was all about getting what each and every one of us needed and what the community needed.
My biggest takeaway is that I got introduced to myself.
We're just a bunch of misfits trying to find community with one another, and that's where my heart just blasted open because I felt like seen, and yeah, it was beautiful. I loved it.